Welcome everybody, and thanks for coming today. Just a few housekeeping things. Um, uh, Liz would like you to put your name and role in the chat. The chat is going to be open for putting in questions during the presentation. And in the last 10 minutes, we're going to go through those questions and have a free-flowing conversation, I suppose, about anything that Liz presented during the session. So I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
Morning or afternoon. I just wanted to again say that this is the second presentation in our Be the Bridge webinar series, and this came out of oh, I see Nilda just
Yeah,
joined.
I let her in.
Yay. So this came out of the survey that we sent out a while ago to affiliates asking them what they needed and what they needed in support from NAMI Connecticut. And I think that if you can stick with the series for the week at lunchtime, you'll find that they're a direct response to the questions that people had about their roles as affiliates and how they, again, could get the support from the state organization. And so this session, from planning to action, and this really, for those of you who are here, I think this is really important that it's something that I would have loved to, or I may still bring to your individual affiliates to talk about creating action steps and goals. And I know that we're getting started with Middletown. We're further ahead with the Bridgeport affiliate. But one of the things when you're starting out, especially, is you don't need a full-blown strategic plan. NAMI Connecticut has a strategic plan, which is quite ambitious, with very small affiliates or ones that are starting out, such as the ones we have in Connecticut, and some of our rural affiliates, which are very small. A full-blown strategic plan really can be very difficult to handle and is overkill. So the most important thing, though, is to make sure you do set goals for the work that you're doing and action steps, even if it's only for a year. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So let me hope that the PowerPoint is working properly. So what I'm going to talk about is action planning, step by step. It's a 5-step process for action planning, setting your annual goals, assessing your volunteer needs once you set those goals to strengthen your affiliate. And one of the things that I just remember from years ago when I was helping to found a local affiliate was people were volunteering, people wanted to do things, but we had no guidelines around it. It was have a meeting and we didn't have the end goal though in sight for the year. It was kind of step by step. And once we sat down, and I remember that literally on the floor, we put out sheets of newsprint and we all sat down and did a step-by-step process for how we could create an action plan, and everybody walked away knowing their roles and responsibilities. So that's what I'm hoping to do both in Bridgeport and with Middletown, is Tom and I can be available to take you through an action planning process. So what we're going to talk about today is, again, action planning for your affiliate. Why? Do you have one? Or, well, this would be for those that already have an established plan, but what's in your plan? Are you using it? A lot of groups and affiliates do uh, action planning, strategic planning, and then it sits in a filing cabinet and they never get back to monitoring it and finding out where they stand in accomplishing their goals and action steps. So we'll go through those 5 steps, which is to assess where you are now as an organization, prioritize your goals, determine your activities to reach your goals, identify the resources you need, both financially and volunteer-wise, to get there. And then the last step would be once you implement your action plan to make sure you're reviewing it quarterly. Then we'll talk about, well, who does the work? And again, that's a whole other topic is volunteer recruitment. But we are going to touch on that in terms of once you have your action steps, your goals, uh, who does the work, and how can you assess your organization to recruit the kind of volunteers that you need. So just think of it like a GPS, and that's what I always say with a strategic plan. It's your map. I love this. It's one of my favorite slides. Which road do I take? She asked. Where do you want to go? Responded the Cheshire Cat. I don't know, Alice answered. Then said the cat, it doesn't matter. So again, I think an action plan and finding the road that you want to go down to reach your destination is going to be really important. So if our audience included some folks who had an action plan already, they've been established. I always ask this question, why do you have an affiliate action plan? Why not? Is your plan sitting on a shelf? Are you making it work? And do you review it quarterly? This is pretty much like the slide before. So again, I think no matter how small or how large your organization is, you need to go through the process of planning, discussing, and thinking what are your goals for the future. And you need to play off your organization's strengths and find out what your environment is that you're going to be working in. So alignment with NAMI, NAMI National has a very, very in-depth strategic plan, and ours at NAMI Connecticut is also um, very strong in activity-wise and what our goals and action steps and objectives are going to be. But you need to adapt your own organization and your own community to an action plan. But you can also be choosing items from the NAMI menu, as we call it, like the programs you're going to have. Maybe your end goal is to do Ending the Silence as an affiliate, or to do a support group in your area. So planning to plan, you need to develop a framework and a timeline for your planning process. So you'll create an action planning committee comprised of your board members, members at large, community leaders. It's always good to have an opinion from people outside your organization to find out what their opinion is of what you need to be doing in the community. Complete a timeline for when you want to have your action plan completed, and then hold an actual action planning retreat. Like we held a strategic planning retreat at the state, but have someone outside of your immediate organization to create that event for you. And that's something that Tom and I also can do as you're moving forward with creating action steps and goals. It should be a day-long event. You really need the time to brainstorm, to talk about what your goals are, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the 5 steps I talked about are assess where you are now, prioritize your goals, determine the activities you need to reach those goals, identify your resources, both financial and human, and implement and review quarterly. And I forgot I have these cute little arrows. So let's go through the steps. Assess where you are now. Use surveys, data, and environmental scans to identify critical issues you need to address. And I think this would be very important to gather your internal information on where are you financially? Are you adhering to governance best practices? How are you doing with the program, or what programs do you want to do? Assess your board. Is that part of your action steps to build that out and make it stronger? And do you want to have more members? What's your membership data look like? Although I will put a little editorial comment in here in that NAMI National is looking at the value of membership. as you may have heard, and deciding whether or not membership with dues attached to it is going to be viable in the future. So stay tuned. We'll find out more about that. So it's great to go to yourselves, your own affiliate, and find out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what do you do to become more effective. But doing it externally with your stakeholders, again, people in the community, people who have been part of your organizational development, how are you viewed? And so that's one of the surveys that you should be doing. What are the most important services? And actually, one of the things that came back from NAMI Connecticut Strategic Plan survey to the field and to other organizations was very, very telling, because over 80% of the people who responded were white women over the age of 55. And their viewpoint, I thought, would be very, very slanted in maybe one way in their communities. But the most interesting comment we got was most important goal for NAMI Connecticut was to diversify and make sure that we are reaching out to all communities in building awareness of NAMI and providing our services. That was actually really exciting to know that we had that support. You'll want to find out what challenges your organization will face in the next 2 years. And with all of that information, make sure you ask your stakeholders what they think are the top 4 or 5 priorities you should focus on in your community. So use your surveys, data, and environmental scans to identify critical issues you need to address. Again, that was so helpful for us because we use that feedback on a larger scale with our strategic plan to narrow our goals down, and we came up with 4 goals. So then you need to determine the activities that support your goals. And I'm going to show you a tool that I have a couple of tools I'm going to be showing you today, but I will send them to you. You'll just see little snapshots of them, and we can do some more work on how to utilize those goals. But one of the things that is really important is use a goal worksheet, which I have. It's called a Smarter Goal Worksheet, and you'll see what what the acronym means. But the goal worksheet will help your organization brainstorm and identify what activities and tasks support your goal. And here's a little snapshot. This is really where the magic happens when you all sit down and talk about what you want to accomplish. And so you break up into groups and talk about what your shared goal is, and then talk about what do you want to improve, what needs to change, how will you measure progress, is it aligned with your mission, is it achievable, do you think it's realistic, by when, and the R is the responsibility. Who takes responsibility for making sure that that work happens? And then again, brainstorming either in small groups, if you take on a particular goal, or in a larger group, you will take a look at these 5 steps, and they're basically, again, brainstorming what activities do you need to implement to reach your goal? What do you need to learn in other words, if you're doing data collection and even creating the survey, what do you need to learn in order to reach your goals? What resources do you need? How will you monitor and assess your growth? And who do you need to collaborate with to reach that individual goal? Usually I like to have like a group of maybe at least 3 people to talk about one goal that they're working on that came out of all the discussions. So then the next step would be to identify resources, both financial and volunteer or human resources. And each goal or action step should have a champion in on your board or in your action planning group to implement the goal activities. And then once you have your action plan, you can move it into a yearly work plan. And it may be that for the first year, your goals or action steps are to increase communication of your affiliate and your visibility in your community. So what you'll want to do is take a look at some action steps or to develop a website, to uh, reach out to all providers in your community, to plan a tabling event. Those are all the different kinds of things that you can do, and then review your work plan and your goals at least quarterly, and update your action steps yearly. So who does all this? I always think of this as an affiliate leader. You're just got tons of paperwork. You're doing everything, and especially in the beginning when you're forming an affiliate. And I began to write down all the things that affiliates do on a volunteer basis because you have volunteer boards of work groups. And I love that. I have to do that again. Whoops, didn't work. But people expect a superhero to come in and make sure everything works and that you all have the volunteers and people that you need to fulfill your action plan. And by and large, that's recruiting volunteers. None of our affiliates in Connecticut have staff at this point. They're all working boards. And so if you're looking at the importance of allocating your work across different volunteers, you really need to have a plan for that too. So the first thing you have to do is you realize is to take a look at all the action steps you have and what do you need volunteers to do and how will you find them? They don't arrive that way. And I just really like this slide. I use this for fundraising too. People who want milk should not seat themselves on a stool in the middle of the field and hope that the cow will back up to them. So you're really going to have to put some effort out to find the volunteers that you need for your individual goals and action steps. So, it's kind of interesting. Volunteers aren't obligated to work for you. They often work long hours. They travel to do tabling events, to come to your meetings. They don't receive any money. Unless they may be doing some presentations that do have small fees attached to them as presenter fees. They may actually spend money on gas, food, supplies. So a volunteer is really giving you a lot. And so my suggestion is to get a volunteer and to find out what your needs are. You need to review your organization's action plan. Look at your goals and objectives, your action steps, review what programs and activities you want to do, assess your need to grow your presence in the community, assess what you don't get done and why, and study how many people currently do how many tasks. So one of the things I suggest is you hold a board with your members or other people who are interested in the community and complete the volunteer needs assessment checklist. And this is a cool little document which will help you go by categories. I mean, if you do support, if you do advocacy, education, outreach, and communication, what you need to do is make a list of the different things that your action steps entail. For instance, under education, if you want, if you're going to do support groups, how many volunteer leaders do you need? And they have to have trained. If you want to do outreach and communication, And you're going to have a newsletter, website management. You need volunteers for Mental Illness Awareness Week event coordination. Just create a document after talking it over in relation to your action steps and goals. Um, Look at where you need volunteers and then create a worksheet. The most difficult thing for any volunteer that you have, and even if it's a very simple action step, is to not be very clear about what their responsibilities are. Um, sort of like advertising for volunteers needed on your website, but not really going into detail what they're needed for, just hoping people will show up. So one of the things that this worksheet, and you'll get a copy of it, this is sort of a sample, which is the goal or action item is to have a NAMI affiliate newsletter. And what you can do is write down the task or activity you need, for instance, a project coordinator, someone to do design layout, someone to write it, and then all the duties and responsibilities of that task are um, detailed. You need to let people know what skills that they have to have. What do you require? You need someone with the ability to meet deadlines, knowledge of newsletter production, perhaps. And then the most important of all is what is their time commitment? And I'm doing that right now with the NAMI board committees, NAMI Connecticut board committees, is if you're on a committee, how many hours can you expect to be doing this for the month? Where is it held? Where's the location? Is this a virtual meeting or activity? Can it be done at home? Can it be done off-site in a meeting space? So this is the type of thing that's very important to really be clear on before you ask someone to volunteer. So again, bring your leaders together, use the volunteer assessment checklist, use the volunteer work project sheet to define the task and responsibilities, skills, time, and then recruit your volunteers with a clear and compelling message. And you all know this. The ideas are for recruiting volunteers. Again, this is a whole individual webinar or presentation, is through the internet, bulletin boards, radio, signature programs, and I know that there are a lot more ideas. So I feel like I really kind of rushed through that, but I know we were very limited on time, and I just wanted to give you a foundation for the whole idea around of creating an action slash strategic plan where you are in relation to where you are as an organization, and then how you can begin to look at what your steps would be, your tasks, and then having people available to do the work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hello. I couldn't see any of you while I was rushing through that, but oh, and we have plenty of time. I could have gone slower.
We don't have any questions in the chat, Liz, so we can just open it up. Oh, Tom's got his hand raised.
Well, I just have an observation. It's not really
Or
a question.
observation, okay. Questions,
Liz,
comments, and concerns.
your PowerPoint needs one more slide,
Okay.
and it's the image of an elephant. And the caption reads, "How do you eat an elephant?" And the answer is one bite at a time. Because this, I'll be honest with you, taking off all my 25 years of NAMI experience, looking at this presentation, I'm like, oh my God, it's a lot. The good news is, A, people have you and me to help guide them through this every step of the way. And it's actually not as complicated as it looks once I think you really have a firm grounding in what NAMI is all about. And of course, we do have that nice training that's come out how to be a NAMI leader. I forget exactly what it's called, but that's always, I think, the first step for someone who may not have any experience with the organization, because that really lays out kind of the overview of not only the three parts of NAMI, the national level, the state level, and then the affiliate level, but also what their roles are and how do they go about fulfilling the overall mission. And I think as long as everyone starts there, now you've got the framework for how all this stuff fits together and all the little details kind of work together to come out with a good finished product. So, and again, it can seem a little overwhelming if you don't have that overall vision of how this all works together. But once you have that, now all these individual things make a lot more sense because you know the greater context.
It really, that's good, Tom. I think it really boils down to, um, with NAMI Connecticut affiliates especially, is get some food, sit down, and decide what you want to do for the next year. And I think that, I don't know yet if, and that's going to be a requirement actually with national at some point. They want to know that people and the affiliates are planning, even if you're tiny, what are you going to do for the next year? And maybe it's as simple as, again, doing a newsletter, because you haven't done one before, but what are the priorities that you have for the next year? And I'd be willing to guess that only one of our affiliates has an action plan. And that really makes it very difficult to know what direction you're heading in and where you need to concentrate your activities. So, even if it's a very small action plan with very few things you're trying to accomplish, you're still accomplishing them and you still have a direction to go in.
Yeah, and again, that first slide with the Alice in Wonderland I thought was wonderful because you're absolutely right. If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which path you take to get there. And as someone who, back in my corporate days, did a lot of consulting work, that was always my first question when meeting with a client is, what are you trying to do? Because so many of them would call up and say, hey, I want to, put in an email system. I'm dating myself, but this is back before email was like widespread. And okay, we can do that, but why do you want to do that? What are you trying to do? And it's amazing how many people would enter into that conversation thinking they needed to get this thing, this solution, and it had to look like this. But when you peeled back the layers as to what you needed, what you really wanted to accomplish, it didn't necessarily look like this. It looked like something over here. So yeah, it's always good to start out with a clear vision of where you want to go before you start any initiative, before you sign up for any training or plan any activity. You really want to have a good, clear idea of what you want to do. And again, that goes back to getting out into your community and finding out what is the need. What are we trying to do here? What is the need we need to fulfill?
Perfect. Yep. Not what you think you
Yeah.
need, but what the community needs.
And trust me, living with someone like me drives my family nuts. My poor wife, she'll come to me wanting to do something, and I always want to take 3 steps back and try to figure out. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's like, you're right, I don't, but I'm trying to understand.
So with Middletown and Bridgeport, at some point we can start that planning process, which will be really fun. I think, and I know this sounds weird, but it is magical. That's where the magic happens when you see people beginning to really zero in on what they want to do for the first year.
Yeah.
Once you, right now, getting established. Oh, sorry, but a big squirrel just landed on my outside window conditioner and is looking in the window. It's weird. Um, I don't know how he got there unless he jumped off the roof. So that's the big question. It's on the second floor. Um, but I think that's going to be really the fun part when you get through with a lot of the things around governance and building a board and that kind of thing. But those are some of the first steps.
Yeah, and certainly one of the key ingredients in this whole mix is having a robust board. The affiliates that I've seen over the years that kind of struggle are the ones that don't have a robust board. They only have half a dozen people. Now you can start with that and that's fine, but the goal should always be to get over at least 10, 12 people, because magic always seems to happen in the affiliates that have 15 or 16 board members, or even 18, because then there's plenty of hands, people are eager, and it just seems to be a much lighter lift to do the things that they try to do. Whereas when you're down to 6 people, it can be overwhelming. So I always encourage the different affiliates to always beef up your boards and always be on the lookout for your next good board member, because, people have life events, things change, people move, people retire. So the board is never static, it's always in flux. So you always want to be looking for your next good board member, because eventually people will, either term out, or again, some life event will happen and they can no longer participate. And you just don't want to not pay attention to that. And then the next thing you know, you're down to 6 people and you're struggling.
So thoughts, participant thoughts?
I have a question. I'm just gonna remember back to my days on an affiliate board. And do you think there are boards that, instead of actually developing a strategic plan, uh, any shape or form, instead try to do that process through their budget, when they develop their budget, instead of doing a separate process, taking that budget, or even taking the strategic plan and developing the budget, or vice versa, whatever, they just do a budget. And they kind of talk about what they're budgeting for this year or next year,
Yeah,
instead of
I
doing a
always
real.
cringe. I always cringe when I'm doing strategic planning or smaller action planning for a year, as opposed to a 3-year
Mm-hmm,
huge strategic
mm-hmm,
plan. And this happened to me in Maryland, where a state organization said, actually, it's interesting. It was a man who was in manufacturing.
mm-hmm,
And so he gauged the success of his business on the number of widgets that he made.
right.
So one of their goals would be, as a business, to say, we need to increase our production by 20,000 widgets. And he was looking at NAMI Maryland the same way, which was his big thing is we need to increase our budget by $1 million. And my big question was, what for? They needed to do their goal planning, even if even if it was kind of things that were way out there. I mean, there was no bad idea, just they were out there. Once you get down to what you want to raise money for, that's really important to identify that first. What do you want to do? And then how do you fund it? And
Mm-hmm.
it may depend on your available resources. If you only have, let's say, $11,000, can you make that work? Or do you need to go out and fundraise and go to your community and begin to build up? But to me, it's backwards to
Mm-hmm.
decide how much money you need first when you don't know what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that was that the crux of what you were
Yeah,
asking?
because I remember we didn't do strategic planning. We just did a budget every year, a budget plan, and we'd sit around and talk,
Yeah.
okay, so we're gonna do one tabling event. We're gonna do two support groups. We're gonna do two family to family classes, and put numbers next to those, instead of sitting down and really doing a strategic plan. We did an annual budget.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right. I don't think it is, but that's just the way it worked.
I wouldn't recommend doing it that way, certainly.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Dana, or anyone?
Yeah, this was helpful. I Namium City did a really good job at this. I feel like exactly what you were talking about. Have a day where we bring everyone together and we have lunch, and we did the whole thing with the big
Yep.
giant pieces of paper and laid it all out. And then I think how I really appreciated that Jen didn't just put it in a file, because as the board president, she ran through like what are our goals and how is what we're talking about in each subsequent board meeting. So I think that's really important. And I had talked about with the NAMI Greater Middletown folks that as well, of like we went through NAMI Nationals mission and vision, and we said at a later date, we'll kind of make sure we stick to that, but add our own flavor to it. And I think one of the people in the room said they wanted to make sure that the meetings were not just us, talking about things and never getting anything done. And so we talked about making sure that on each board meeting agenda, we have our like goals there front and center so that we're always bringing the conversation back to meeting those goals.
That's really good. That also reminds me of New Jersey because they had they're a big organization, but they had a big strategic plan, but they put the goals and objectives on poster board and pinned them around the boardroom. They had their own conference room. So every time the board met, they saw the goals.
Yes.
That was really very helpful.
Yeah. Like, as you know, as we've gotten to know each other with working together, I love a checklist. I love I love an action plan. So I'm ready. I'm ready and raring.
Good. Well, if there's something else for now, we can give you 10 minutes back of your life. Anything else?
I just want to say to Pat, if you can get in touch with me, please, because we're going to be teaching online. This is going to be my first class online, and I don't get it yet. I don't get it.
Okay,
Please,
I'm gonna write that down, Nilda,
please,
on my action plan.
Thank you, Nelda, for doing this. This is great.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
appreciate you all.
There's pros and cons to it, but if, one of the pros is you get a bigger audience, you can get to more people at the same time, so. Yeah, I'll give you a call,
But
Nilda, and
concern is because it's Renee and myself.
Renee and
Yeah,
you, okay.
how we gonna be if it's hard in my experience, giving NAMI basic in person due to the questions, emotions, all this
Mm-hmm.
chaos it comes out for family that is the first time they are receiving this information. um I, I don't know how we I'm very stuck with
Well,
that.
I'll just share with you, Nilda, that I've taught family to family in both in person and online throughout the years. And they're a little different, but people get their emotions out online as well. It does. At the end of the 8 weeks, I always felt like it was a cohesive group of shared experiences who could talk to each other, and they couldn't hug each other like they do in person, but
Okay.
they could still have those conversations. And I didn't find it was a big impediment, but
And why NAMI do not have like I said, like a PowerPoint with the information that we only read? Because the only information I got until now is the pamphlets, the exercise. But in the meanwhile, we're gonna have to be reading. But we don't have that in the computer. We have that in our carpet. So
yeah,
that's my confusion. How we gonna be reading with the
yeah, we
head
can go
down?
through it, and I can go to meet with you and Renee, and we can go through it
Okay,
and tell
please
you
do that.
how my co-facilitator, co-teacher, and I did it online. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's
okay,
doable.
I
yeah.
took in the spring, I did a family to family class. Because we're going through a tough situation with my grandson, but I did it online with John Pendleton and Danny, and I don't remember her last name. It was
Jen,
great. It was great, and they hadn't done it before at some point, but they got it. They've got it down, and it worked really well. And I think people felt actually people talked a lot. I think
oh
people
yeah.
yeah, they talked a lot, and it worked out. It worked out.
Mm.
Okay.
And we got the materials ahead of time for the meeting and, it was good.
Mhm.
Okay. I hope so. Okay. Well,
Okay,
it was a great meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, it was a great meeting.
thank y'all. Sorry I talked so fast.
Oh, that's fine.
I couldn't see the clock with the way the display was showing either, so I had no idea what time it was. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
okay, bye-bye.
Liz. Get back to me about the 12th if that works for you. Oh, okay. Bye.
I'm gonna go through my emails to you right now.
Your meeting disappeared. I was like, wait, where'd you go? Okay, cool.
Cool. Bye.
All right, I'll see you guys later.